thinks, you know, how it's been a really busy start to this year. Well, I'm just jumping on Zoom now to speak to our producer, Mike Hanson, and just chew the cud on what's been a fantastic 2 weeks. I'm Anna Webb. Welcome to A Dog's Life. Hey, Mike.
Hey, Anna.
Hey, this is great that we're having a bit of a spontaneous chat.
Well, there's so much been going on, and I know I keep sharing all these links to all these stories I keep seeing, because it seems like every day there's something new, and I keep thinking, should we do an episode on this? Who can we get? And then there's been so many, we just thought, well, they're probably not worth 30 minutes. They're probably a couple quick headlines. So let's just do a quick roundup on our own.
Yeah, well, I suppose, yes, the last 2 weeks have been extremely busy on all levels. The first thing that kicked off the new year, actually, was big news in that South Korea has announced that no more eating of dogs. Eating dog meat is now officially banned, although it doesn't come into actual effect for 3 more years, which is quite a long time for the dogs that are in these dog meat farms to be eaten. Yeah, so that's big news, I think, because all being well, that will set a precedent for other countries. I do believe Vietnam does eat dogs. And we know in China, they have that dreadful Yulin festival. And it's unspeakable really what happens where pet dogs are stolen sometimes and thrown onto a barbecue alive. The cruelty involved with that is just at another level, really.
Well, that's kind of always been sort of my get out clause, because a lot of these things are cultural, and people say, well, in India, cows are sacred, and the idea of having a steak over there is an anathema to them. And I get that. So I can't really, as a meat eater myself, I'm not vegetarian. I'll have a nice steak. I'll probably have one tonight. But I can't condemn another culture for eating a dog because they view it in a different way. We've raised them to be companions, not just work animals or other livestock. So I understand in reading that Korean story, 100, going back centuries, where having cows was not exactly sacred, but so rare that you had to get government permission to actually slaughter one. So they needed protein, and the next best thing was all these stray dogs. So you can understand why they did it, and I can't condemn them for it. But in terms of that festival you talk about, the unnecessary cruelty with this idea that it makes the flavor better or gives you an aphrodisiac or whatever crazy ideas they come up with to really, really torture the animals. I can't get on with that. If you're going to eat dogs for cultural reasons or historic reasons, I get that. But actually being cruel to them for no good reason, I'm not having that.
No, gosh, no, absolutely not. And all of this stuff, the real ancient traditional Chinese medicine, which I think, the aphrodisiac aspect, is something apparently that dog meat offers you. It hasn't been totally scientifically backed up. And, on other aspects of that, you've got how poachers from China have been killing tigers so that, pretty much, a lot of tigers have had awful deaths and, of course, are now facing extinction in the wild. Sorry, Baggy the cat here is keen to join in on this podcast episode. Yes, Baggy, I'm sure in China they eat cats too. But don't worry, you're not there. You're safe.
For now.
For now.
If he doesn't get off the microphone, he's...
Exactly. No, it's all good sound effects. I know. So let's see really what happens. And I know I read that same article, and you can there were the older generation of the farmers saying, look, our livelihood now is canned. What are we going to do? We're too old to
well, I think that's the main reason why it's not coming in effect for 3 years, is to give those farmers the opportunity to transition to something else or whatever else they can do. But yeah, a whole industry is built up around this, and there's farmers and everything that kind of goes down the production line. They'll all have to have time to change it to something else, and so that's understandable as well. And I think that's why we're having this 3-year delay before it actually kicks in. Unfortunately, in that time, more dogs are going to be slaughtered until that comes into effect. But also the interesting thing is that whilst there'll be a ban on raising and slaughtering dogs for market, it's still not going to be illegal to eat it. If you just happen to come across, if you happen to run over one in the street, you can take it home and eat it.
Oh, that's just, I can't go there with that thought. But yes, you're right. So,
Mm,
as with all legislation, there's these caveats in it that,
yeah,
to play safe and I suppose keep everybody happy,
yeah,
which
yeah.
is a bit annoying. But let's hope so, because I think I agree with you culturally. I've been to India, as I always say on the pod,
Mm,
and I couldn't believe it. There was a motorway. We were on a motorway, and there were two cows that decided to lie down.
yeah, yeah.
In the road, and they weren't forced, they weren't moved. We all had to wait, and it took an hour and a half for the
Mm,
cows to decide to stand up and just cross the motorway completely. But the whole traffic system ground to a halt for the cows, which is rather brilliant. I mean, it was brilliant to see. And they've got small cows in India, and they'd be in the shops. You'd go
yeah.
into little shops and the cows are allowed in, so different.
That's brilliant. But even though there's different cultures and different histories and all, I was shocked to learn this week of a country where it is not illegal to kill and eat dogs, and you would never believe what country that is.
What is not illegal?
Yeah,
Where's that then?
Canada.
No, God,
Yeah, I
crumbs.
I found out another podcast that I work on that it is not illegal in Canada to kill or dog, and I looked it up because I couldn't believe it, and it's true. And I've got let me read this to you.
Yeah,
Uh,
gosh. So hang on.
And this is because, as you can imagine, there's a million and one petitions now in Canada flinging around, people trying to make it illegal. It is legal to consume dog and cat meat in Canada if properly sourced or killed and gutted in front of federal inspectors. A restaurant can substitute dog or cat meat without facing any criminal charges or health violations. There are also no legal consequences if a pet owner kills and eats their dog or cat. What do you think of that?
I don't know. I'm lost for words.
I'm shocked because you got Canadian heritage, and obviously I do. I had
Yeah,
no idea that was ever permitted. I mean, I don't know anybody at home who eats dogs, and I've been to some restaurants where the food's been pretty dodgy, and I wouldn't be surprised. But I had no idea it was legal, and I learned that this week.
crumbs. That's mad. But if we look into it on a legislative basis, what does it say about the UK?
I don't know, I haven't looked that up, but I would imagine. Well, should I do a quick Google search?
Go on, just do a quick Google
Illegal?
search.
Is it legal to see dogs
No, that is
in
shocking
England?
about Canada, because you always, I was born there and everything. I never really
And
spent.
it's not illegal here either.
It's not illegal.
Yeah. House of Commons Library. It may seem extraordinary, but consuming dog meat is currently not illegal in the UK.
Whoa.
Oh my God. I think we've opened a can of worms there.
Yeah,
Uh,
gosh, maybe we need to be a bit
uh,
more panorama about this, Mike,
I
and
think so. Yeah.
follow this
I
up
feel
with
another petition coming on.
yes, yes, indeed. Well, yes, I was down in Parliament Square actually on
Yeah, I was
Thursday.
going to ask you. So, what were you doing down there?
Well, it's a campaign led by Georgia Toffolo called Can the Kibble. So as you can imagine, Mike, I was really proud to be invited to be their nutrition expert for
Mm,
this campaign, highlighting various aspects of kibble that arguably isn't that nutritious, shall we say, for
yeah.
dogs to eat. As you know, we've done loads of podcasts
Mm,
touching on this, talking to, the leading lights like Dr. Nick Thompson, Dr. Lise Hanson, and many others, all about the hidden aspects of processed food, which is very similar to the hidden aspects of human processed food as
yeah.
well, packed full of latent sugars that over time, of course, can create inflammation in the body, which, we know from O-level biology that is the root cause of all disease.
Yeah.
So it was just really an awareness, a big kibble amnesty
Mm.
that took place on Thursday.
And how many people were there?
Gosh, I didn't count them. A good amount, like definitely over 50 people,
Mm.
some with dogs, some without. We all had super banners and
That's a good turnout because it was about minus 50 itself.
Well, it was
What was it?
-3. I
Yeah.
was shocked. It was very, very, very cold, to be honest, but it was bright, which was lovely. It would have been worse if it had been warm and raining, you know. I would
Mm.
have made it, put a bit of a dampener, as they say, on the proceedings. But everyone enjoyed it. And I think everyone who was there really believed in it. And it's something that, you know, certainly isn't a new thing to talk about, but I think it's great to raise awareness at a government level. I mean, you know, for me, you know, if you look at the Animal Welfare Act, the actual stipulations and breakdown of it, you
Mm.
know, in it, it does say that animals should be fed on a suitable diet.
Yeah.
And depending on what you believe, if dogs are carnivores, which dogs are carnivores, they're physiologically carnivorous, then does mean they need to eat a lot of meat. And Baggy here, who's just missing the microphone at the
Mm.
moment, my cat,
Mm.
he is an obligate carnivore, and have to say he loves his meat.
Mm.
He's definitely a meat eater. So to feed dogs with ingredients that are very starchy, you know,
Well, it just
potatoes,
turns to
sweet
sugar,
potatoes.
doesn't it? It just turns to sugar in the system, right?
Exactly,
Mm.
exactly, it does.
And that's why we have so many obese dogs and dogs with diabetes and with joint issues and all that kind of stuff where you see dogs 7, 8 years old, overweight, and then dying of cancer. You go, oh, what have you been feeding your dog? You know?
Well, this is it. You know, there is a massive obesity problem in this
Mm.
country, not
Mm.
just for people,
Mm.
but, you know, with dogs, 1 in 2 dogs are estimated to be, using a polite word, you know, overweight.
Mm.
And again, we know obesity puts pressure on the joints, causes inflammation on the joints. So it's like this whole holistic picture that one condition can trigger another condition. And certainly in my experience of putting a lot of dogs on diets over the years, I honestly believe the only way to lose weight on a dog is to feed whole food and to add a lot of functional carbohydrates, which are different from complex carbohydrates in terms of, you know, fruit and
Mm.
vegetables, rather than adding potato, rice, pasta, that
Yeah.
type of ingredient.
So what kind of vegetables should people do? I mean, I know the answer to this because
Well, leafy
we eat for
greens.
probably, but yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, leafy greens are
Mm.
the firm favorites. So your kale, your spinach, watercress is extremely nutritious. Tends to only be available, obviously, fresh and you know, locally sourced in the summer. But watercress, you know, when you eat watercress, you know, it's just all those flavors in it. You
Mm.
can just almost taste the nutrition in it, for example. But these ingredients have to be really pulverized because dogs can't naturally break down the cellulose wall from fruit and veggies. So you have to make it, you know, almost like a mush, a puree, so that it can absorb through the stomach lining and be, you know, this word in nutrition is bioavailable, and it just means it can be absorbed at a cellular level. You know, for me, it's like putting petrol in the car. You
Mm.
know, without petrol, your car doesn't run.
But if you put the wrong petrol in, it won't, you'll ruin it.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
Mm.
look at me, you know, my blonde
Mm.
tear. I did put petrol in a diesel once and it
Mm.
wasn't good.
Mm.
Yeah, we ground to a halt
Mm.
and it was dreadful. And it was before the time, because I think so many people did it that
Mm.
the AA and everybody made people pay, you know, they wouldn't come out and help you. I think I was helped, but you had to pay for the whole thing because, you know, you were just considered stupid and you should have looked at the pump and read
Mm.
the instructions. You know what I
Mm.
mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's all about, you know, it's all boils down to you are what you eat.
Yeah. Which we
And
said.
so is your dog.
Mm.
But fruits are super, you know, like berries, raspberries, blackberries are one of my favorites also to add in.
And blueberries or burberries, whatever it is that's in the very good paleo that do. That's good for
Yeah.
their eyes. It's, you know, we like that stuff for Billy because his breed, the one weakness is their sight can go.
Yeah.
So we give him lots of carrot and lots of, was it blueberry or burberries or whatever it is we give him that
Yeah.
is,
Yeah. No, and
it's
actually
good.
blueberries are also, yeah, associated with cognitive health.
Mm.
They're fantastic. They're really good. And obviously, if you could get these sourced in the UK, so much the better, without sort of incurring lots of air miles and the like, to
Mm.
basically make feeding sustainable.
Mm.
As well, because I think that's all got to do with sort of the seasons and where you're based geographically. You know, dogs in Mexico, for example, you know, I do believe they'll have a slightly different metabolism, different way of coping with different extremes in weather,
Yeah.
perhaps dogs that live in the north of Sweden need their diet adjusting slightly differently as well. So it's about, regional, it's about age, it's about lifestyle, it's about
Mm.
individual breed. Mm.
No, exactly, exactly. And I know what I wanted to ask you. I've been meaning to ask you for ages because I keep having people keep asking me and I never remember the answer. But sweet potatoes, is that
Oh,
of
yes.
any benefit to dogs or not? Because I
No.
know potatoes is not great, but I've been told, oh, well, give them a sweet potato because it's good for them, and I don't think it is.
Such a good question. I wrote a blog about it actually. The short answer is no. And my
Mm,
reference to that would be to urge people to put into Google sweet potatoes, Dogs Naturally magazine, and
mm,
watch the editor, Dana Scott, do a great talk on why sweet potatoes are not a good ingredient for your dog. Similarly, as a potato, I mean, they are a tubal. So they're of the family of a potato. Again, it is, a complex carbohydrate.
mm. So they can't
And
digest it.
they can't digest it. And again, it's it's starch, which
Mm,
does turn to sugar. So we're back to the beginning of the inflammation in the body.
mm.
If you think about it, in the wild, a wolf, the high predatory animal. I know dogs have evolved massively since being wolves, and they are really, a different species now. However, you watch that, you watch wolves hunt, and they're really not looking for, roots and digging up plants. They're looking to kill a deer or an
Mm.
elk and eat the stomach is usually what's eaten first. And that, of course, we can give to our dogs in, my favorite ingredient, raw green tripe.
Tripe. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. It's stinky, but it really has got everything in it for your dog. Dogs do eat some vegetation. And when they're really, really hungry, you'll see them perhaps digging for some herbs. Dogs, I think, are very in tune with self selection, which is another big aspect of natural health at the moment, where you can get dogs to self select a herb. They do it a lot with horses, actually, because obviously horses are herbivores. So eating herbs and grasses and the likes, very species appropriate for a horse.
Mm.
And they'll select which herb they need so they kind of know what's good for them. So that's
Yeah.
quite interesting. And when dogs eat grass, so many theories on it, but it's interesting. Grass, fresh, juicy grass without any worms on it or anything, is full of a mineral called silicia. And silicia, when taken, for example, homeopathically, it basically rids your body of things that shouldn't be in there.
Right.
So that idea that they eat and nibble grass if they might be feeling a bit peaky, you can see that sort of old wives' tale could be true because of the silicia content that is in fresh grass.
I've always thought that must be the case because particularly or periodically Billy will chomp on some grass, and it's usually around the time he's had maybe a bit of dodgy tummy or
Mm,
something, or
mm.
yeah, I think he's eaten some that's maybe not quite agreed with him. We're very careful with this diet, but he does get the odd treat. Particularly if we go to the pub, he'll get a sausage, and all the chefs around where we live all love him, so they always bring him out either a slab of roast beef during on a Sunday if we go in, or they'll give him a sausage, whatever. And we try not to do that too often, but it's a treat for him. But sometimes we can see the effects of
Really.
yeah, not very much. Mainly, the rest of his diet is really, really controlled and good for him. But over Christmas, I think we found that we were in the pub quite a lot naturally, and I think he had quite a lot of sausages. And after a while, I think it kind of
They
had an effect.
vary though, don't
Yeah,
they,
yeah,
sausages? I
yeah.
mean,
Well, that's the other thing. Yeah,
you can get really good sausages and
yeah.
really not so good. So
Mm,
again, that's kind of the aspect really with any food you're feeding your dog. I mean, I do believe that not all raw dog food is the same. It is important to ensure that the beef in a raw diet, that the cows ate grass, that the chickens were able to run around and have a
mm,
good life,
mm,
because all of that does transfer into the food. And of
mm,
course, farmers that, tend to use a lot of steroids and antibiotics. And there is a worry now with different new vaccines going to be used in livestock. the worry is it will travel into the food chain.
Mm,
So not
mm,
only for dogs, of course. So do you remember the episode we did with Dr. Jean Dodds?
yeah,
And
yeah,
Jean said, Anna, the solution for us humans is to become vegetarian.
yeah.
But obviously dogs can't be vegetarians. Dogs, they can, dogs do thrive on cheese and eggs. But similarly, if the cheese is made from milk
Mm.
that comes from a cow, and if that cow, you see, so
It's pumped
it
up on
all
antibiotics is going to be the same thing. Yeah.
exactly. So that is the thing for organic, but of course you pay a lot more for that. So again, ethical and sustainable is really the key. But a great ingredient that's had a lot of press, only because a lot of it comes from the UK's seashores, is seaweed.
Mm,
So
hmm.
seaweed is something that is in paleo's very good, actually,
Yeah.
and it's packed with every single nutrient, minerals, and vitamins. So that's something that's really interesting.
Mm,
Yeah, yeah.
mm,
And
mm.
me, I love my green lip mussel, don't I? As an anti-inflammatory source for joints
Yeah.
because it's packed, it's got the whole spectrum in it of your omegas in green lip mussel. And of course, it is a mussel, like a moules marinière mussel. So it's a seafood. So for me, it's my preferred recommendation to use for dogs as they age. But the idea is you preempt things happening. In my
Yeah.
study, the whole point was you don't wait until your dog is stiff. You start really from the age of 2 or 3, making sure their exercise is appropriate, so you're not pulling muscles, straining the spine. Sometimes that's inevitable with dogs, because also I do believe dogs should be dogs, and
Mm,
if they want to run through a wood at high speed, jumping over logs and doing whatever tight turns and having lots of fun doing all their sniffing, then that's also important for enrichment. But being able to balance that with nutrition, with some physical therapies and an awareness of what's going on, I think is really useful.
yeah. 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 So what else has been going down at Parliament?
Well,
Yeah.
big news actually, only yesterday. You know how the animal welfare bill, kept bill, was shelved. It was
Yeah.
shelved about
Yeah.
18 months ago after much, anticipation, because that's the irony, you see. It's all gone mad,
Mm,
right? So by that, I mean, there was this great piece of legislation looking like it was coming into Parliament that was going to fix everything. It was going to make dog theft a specific crime. It was going to clamp down on illegal puppy smuggling coming in mostly from Ireland,
mm,
fueling these internet sites where you can buy and sell dogs now, like you buy a vacuum cleaner,
yeah.
which is something I'm really passionate somehow to stop,
Mm,
because it's making buying dogs too easy. We must understand that a dog is a commitment, not a convenience, and not a toy, for the weekend, then to sell it again,
mm.
a week later or whatever. But yeah, so what happened in government yesterday? Big news, big news. Yes, pet abduction is now going to be made a specific crime with
Hurrah.
much higher penalties, as was proclaimed in the Animal Welfare Kept Bill. So it has been a very interesting 2 weeks at the start of 2024.
Mm,
Pet abduction is now going to be a specific crime, long awaited for, But interestingly, what's been debated is, should it be called pet abduction? And we did talk about this. Do you remember, with Dr.
yeah.
Dan Allen
Mm.
of Pet Theft Reform? So what do you think? Do you think the word abduction is appropriate?
I do because it's another word for kidnap. It's for stealing a sentient being, essentially. So there's robbery, there's stealing, and then there's kidnapping. You don't say that guy stole a child. He abducted or he kidnapped a child,
Mm,
or they stole your bike. They didn't abduct your bike or kidnap your bike. They stole your bike. They abducted your kid. And the difference is one's an inanimate object, and another one's a sentient being. And by using that word abduction, underscores the fact that a dog is a sentient being that's got feelings and an emotional intelligence and has with you a connection. So it's not just like your handbag or your phone being stolen. It's something being abducted from your family. So it's very key. The language is very, very key on that. And I think it's exactly, I'm glad they've called it that.
I agree completely. And, luckily now we've got the science as well to back
Mm,
up that
hmm.
dogs have emotional intelligence. And the one I really love is episodic memory that was proved
Yeah.
only in 2019. So dogs remember events that happen in certain contexts and association builds up. The classic example is why dogs won't perhaps walk to the vet with you because they know where they're going.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the most sort of common one to kind of
But
highlight.
it's kind of weird that anyone had that any doubt about that because we all know a bad dog or that what turned that dog mean? He's been mistreated. Well, then they remember by their being beaten or whatever repeatedly. They remembered and it's kind of changed their behavior. So how could we not think that if they had no emotional intelligence or no memory, you'd be starting from scratch. You could kick a dog to half to death, and it was and it's not going to turn mean.
Mm,
Or
mm,
these rescues that come really really timid and spooked by things because they remember, oh, I've had a really bad time, and now I'm in a new situation. This is not good, and my memories tell me I should be aware.
mm.
So how does anyone think that a dog does not have a memory, episodic or otherwise?
I know, it's absolutely extraordinary. It's a bit like if you remember, the episode we did with,
Mm.
Dr. Rupert Sheldrake.
Mm.
Um,
Who? I've never heard you mention him before.
oh dear, that of course, if you've lived with animals, they've got emotional intelligence. But
Mm,
you see, hardcore scientists didn't go with that
yeah.
until it was proved, thanks to modern technology, first of all in Atlanta and then later in New York. Only, it was around about 2010, so not that long ago, that they were able to, watch dogs' brains because they trained dogs to go into an MRI scanner and stay awake. So they were able to do simple tests and then watch the brain respond to the human walking, their special human walking past, and they could see how their brain fired up in different aspects. And they actually have now even proved that dogs do have a whole area in the brain that does respond to love.
Mm,
So this whole idea of cupboard love as we run into Valentine's Day is totally exploded as well. Dogs do actually genuinely love. It's not about the treats. It
yeah.
is about the actual human and the bond that you build, which takes time, commitment, patience,
Mm,
every day, and loads of consistency and a healthy dose of having fun.
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah,
W-
so it is. It's mad. I know. I mean, I would talk to, top behavior people around about 2007, 2009, and the whole idea of emotional intelligence, feelings, intuition. I mean, heavens above, telepathy
mm,
or, uh, you know, the ability to tap into the sixth sense, utterly slammed down.
mm,
The idea that I could even perhaps postulate what Molly, at that time, my first miniature bull terrier, could have been thinking, nonsensical. So you
yeah.
see, it has changed a lot. So, and that is the good that science, I think, has done.
Mm, yeah.
Yeah. And then we've got Crufts coming up.
I was going to say, so yeah, so Crufts coming up and in March. Any new sort of innovations or big things to look forward there?
Mm, well, I think this year Crufts is going to make as big a kind of message because of some facts and figures that are going to be coming out imminently on research on the fallout from the pandemic and the puppies purchased in the pandemic. So
Mm,
there's another wave of research that is going to be released actually, and on the basis of that, a lot more education at Crufts, a much bigger emphasis, I understand, on the discovered dogs section of Crufts, which is where all the breeds are showcased by enthusiasts and experts in those breeds. So people can actually, and I really recommend this to people to go. And, you might think you you want a bloodhound, random thought.
Mm.
And then when you actually see how large they are,
Mm.
how they slobber loads, and how they've got, you know, a real instinctualness about them as a hound that is still quite hound-like, you know, that maybe you think, well, no, that actually might be a little bit too much for me as a first-time dog owner. You know, I might be better looking at a miniature dachshund. So I'm still choosing a hound if that's something that you want, because obviously we know that there's 8 different categories of dogs and they
Mm.
all fit in slightly differently. Rottweiler's a working breed. Obviously a bull terrier is a terrier. Your Billy is a terrier.
Mm.
Mr. Binks is now classified as a toy breed. There's all these different types. A Dalmatian is a utility breed. So there's so much to learn about dogs and their history and how they fit into our history. And that's kind of a clue, I think, as to thinking what sort of dog will work for me, knowing
Yeah.
your own personality types, your own liking for doing long hikes, or are you more just of a little trundle around the local square type person? The size of your accommodation, do you have a garden? What type of dog is going to work in my lifestyle, my accommodation, and, you know, how will it fit with my experience that I've got of dogs? And there is a dog out there for everyone. And I
Mm.
think people can learn a huge amount by going to Crufts.
Definitely, definitely.
Are you going to come this year?
Well, yeah, if things all line up, because we had a good time up there a couple of years ago, and that's still one of our most popular episodes. It's in our top 10 over the years, across 2022 or whatever it was.
Yeah,
Is
no,
it? Yeah.
yeah,
So
it
yeah,
was.
let's aim to go back up, yeah, and see Bill and everybody up there.
Yeah, exactly. And we get little snips from people. Maybe go around, discover dogs, choose maybe the top 10 most popular breeds, and maybe go and have a little chat with some of those people and
Mm.
talk to them about why they think pugs, for example, because they're in the top 10, are still in the top 10. Because
Yeah.
again, with a pug, you've got to choose the right breeder, you know, because flat-faced dogs do come with their problems. And of
Mm.
course, the other thing we've seen last year is, you know, this huge rise in vet bills,
Yeah.
because that's affecting people now, you know, because people can't afford them in a nutshell.
Yeah.
And that's impacting on dog ownership, and it's impacting on the amount of dogs that are now in rescue. I mean, you know, Ira Moss, Will Dog's
Yeah.
massive friend of the show. You know, when we had our last chat, we both got a bit depressed, didn't we? Actually,
Yeah.
because, you know, when you talk about what's going on the front line of it all, it's not good. And of course, that hasn't been helped recently by government, going back to that, with the banning of the XL bully, which
Uh,
is still being fought by animal welfare organisations and some of Britain's top barristers, hopefully, you know, to have the ban revoked, and rather than just banning, but, you know, overhaul dog ownership actually in this country now. I think it does need something big times, whether it's a dog license to be reintroduced, but one that works, where, you know, funds are ring fenced and then put back into society through
mm.
local authorities, you know, whatever, to help people with their dogs, and not, you know, put stigma attached to looking for help with your dogs, you know, because dogs are complex. And I think social media, who conveys this image of it being really easy to live with dogs, and, you know, arguably they can be a bit of clickbait, and
Mm-hmm.
that isn't why you should get a dog. A dog is for life,
Yeah.
not just for Instagram.
Exactly. Yeah.
I know, well, you know
Mm.
me, you know
Mm.
what I'm like
Mm.
about all that.
Mm.
Anyway, yeah, so Mike, yeah, no, I'm looking forward to this year. It's feeling like it's going to be a good start. Something I am feeling is that natural is coming through now. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, when I studied to be a natural nutritionist and a naturopath, you know, people honestly didn't know what one was at all. But what I'm seeing now is that many conventionally qualified vet nurses, for example, are doing courses like the one I've done, and that does
Mm.
still exist with the College of Integrated Veterinary Therapies, to learn about other things so that they can perhaps add to their skill set and their knowledge and offer a more balanced and rounded service.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I get it. I get it. Well, it's been a really good roundup of things that have been
Yeah.
going on this year, or so far, and we're only two weeks into the year.
I know, exactly, exactly. It's been a bit mad. Yeah, so Mike, yeah, no, look, you know, new year, let's hope it's a good one.
Well, we got a lot of things in the pipeline. Watch this space. We got some new projects, new partnerships, lots of things going on that we will reveal when it's appropriate.
Yes, absolutely, Mike. So here's to that.
Here's to that.
That's our show, Mr. Binks. What did you think? Yes, I know you had a great time in Parliament Square. You even wore your little placard. And you're right, it is time for Woof of the Week. It just goes to show that with determination and constant campaigning, change through government can happen. Well, I hope you all enjoyed it. If you did, go on, rate and review the show wherever you tune into your podcasts. Thanks again to Mike for this episode, and I think we'll do some more like this, and all the links to ourselves are in the show notes. Find out more about Mike at Pod People UK. Find out more about me at Anna Webb Dogs, and check out the various packages I can offer on nutrition and or behaviour that are on my website. What's that, Mr. Binks? Yes, you're right. We will be in your feed next Sunday. So go on, subscribe now. It's free. And that way you'll never miss another show. Bye for now.